Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video we're going to discuss Pavlov's dog's conditioning pertaining to classical conditioning for humans. And it's been rolled out through our educational system here in America, as well as Hollywood social engineering using newspapers, radio, magazines, film, and I guess Netflix. So, also going to cover the topic of hiding in plain view, which the clandestine services love to do, and then giving you subliminal cuts, subliminal messages within the general poppycock message, just to let you know that they know how smart they are. They like to tell you how smart they are covertly. They don't want to say it out loud. So they say it through the subliminal cut. So we're going to give some examples of that. But first, before that, let's discuss just a little bit about Ivan Pavlov and where he came from, because he didn't come from under a rock, right? So it turns out this is something that was developed in the early 1900s. Ivan Pavlov was a physiologist. Okay, so he's not a psychiatrist. This is very important because this is a topic that's studied by all psychology students, is the Pavlov's dog classical conditioning theory. But Ivan Pavlov was a Russian physiologist, and his dog experiments played a critical role in the discovery of one of the most important concepts in psychology, which is now known as classical conditioning. It happened quite by accident because Pavlov's famous experiments that had such a major impact on our understanding was having more to do with getting his dogs to not crap on the floor than it did about controlling a herd of human beings so that they would wear face diapers and conform to mandatory vaccinations and PCR, DNA collections procedures, and just volunteer for that without asking any questions or resisting in any way other than if you were a disobedient citizen. While studying digestion in dogs, Pavlov noticed an interesting occurrence. His canine subject would begin to salivate whenever an assistant entered the room, anticipating food. The concept of classical conditioning is studied by every entry-level psychology student today. So it may be surprising to learn that the man who first noted this phenomenon was not a psychologist at all. In his digestive research, Pavlov and his assistants would introduce a variety of edible and non-edible items and measure the saliva production of his dogs. Salivation, he noticed, is a reflex process. It occurs automatically in response to a specific stimulus, and it is not under conscious control. However, Pavlov noticed that the dogs would often begin salivating in the absence of food and smell. He quickly realized that the saliva response was not due to an automatic psychological response. Based on his observations, Pavlov suggested that salivation was a learned response. Pavlov's dog subjects were responding to the sight of the research assistant's lab coats, the white lab coats, which the animals had come to associate with the presentation of food. Pavlov then focused on investigating exactly how those conditioned responses are learned or acquired. In a series of experiments, he set out to provoke a conditioned response to a previously neutral stimulus. All right, I can go on and on. I'll post this link below. What I wanted to tell you is here we are in the here and now. This was all being done in the early 1900s. Now we're in 2023. We have the internet, military, industrial communication platform. We have 5G satellites, which can beam direct energy impulses down to the earth. We have aluminum chemtrails and titanium lithium particulates dumped all over our low atmosphere. And we have 5G towers in all the cities all the smart grids in the world. We have neighborhood smart grid transponders on all the street lights. If you haven't noticed, the little blue cup at the top of the street light, that's not normal. That is a pulsing device for localization of the internet radio frequency, RF pulsing. All right? So I guess what I wanted to tell you is that we're in the here and now. And the here and now is we have continuous Pavlov dog's conditioning of all the humans who are submissive to pacification and control. Hollywood being the dominant content creator of poppycock messaging, the promotion of poppycock and the concealing of the truth. So they produce many documentaries which of course are false because their documentaries conceal the truth and promote a ridiculous conspiracy theory as to what happened. Let me give you a few examples. Okay, so the newspapers under the direction of William Randolph Hearst, they promoted the idea that the Spanish mined and exploded the United States main ship in the port of Havana, Cuba, on or around February 14th, 1898, killing 266 naval seamen. Okay? Well, that's poppycock. That never happened. It was probably Navy intelligence black ops SEALs that did that. In any case, the United States Navy and Marines have controlled Cuba ever since February 1898, if not earlier than that. That means there was never a Bay of Pigs invasion. That means there was never a Cuban Missile Crisis, the 13 days of October in 1962 that we were all scared into believing we're going to die of a nuclear explosion and you needed to hide underneath your little desk. Can you imagine telling kindergartners and first and second grade children to hide under their desks because the Russians are going to explode a nuclear warhead over your school? That's pretty perverted. That's exactly what we did with COVID, telling children to wear face diapers like they're part of a cult ritual and they're children. That's Pavlov's conditioning, only it's not about salivating for food. It's about brutal terror and fear. And we did that in 2020, 21, and to some extent, we're still doing it in 2023. All right? And another example is the media told you that Sirhan Sirhan murdered Robert Kennedy, and we all believe them because Walter Cronkite said so on the CBS Evening News through the Masonic eyeball of Freemasonry, Columbia Broadcasting System. So we all believed him, but it turned out that that was a lie, and that it was Thane Eugene Caesar, who's an employee of Lockheed at the Skunk Works, which is their highest security division, and he did it. He's Filipino, and he was a black ops murderer who killed Robert Kennedy on June 5th, 1968. Although Kennedy, did live until the next day and was pronounced dead around 2:30 a.m. on June 6th, 1968. Then the media told you that Sharon Tate was murdered by a bunch of hippies. They didn't tell you that right away. They waited 4 months to tell you that. And that it was Tex Watson, who never went by Tex. His name is Charlie Watson. And he was 23 years old. He had a bad knee from a motorcycle crash, which got him out of the mandatory conscription draft. Otherwise, he would have been in the army and unavailable to be scapegoated by the Sharon Tate murder. But anyway, that's what the media told you, that Susan Atkins, with a 10-month-old baby boy, which they neglected to tell you she had a 10-month baby boy, and they forgot to tell you that Linda Kasabian had a 1-year-old daughter and was pregnant with a son. They forgot about that. And then they told you that Patricia Krenwinkel with the red hair and the crazy Susan Atkins murdered 5 people at Cielo Drive. Okay, well, that was a lie. That was a NATO soldier attack of 12 to 16 men armed with M16 rifles and M7 bayonets, and they wanted to conceal that fact, so they concocted a preposterous cover story, which has now gone on for over 50 years. Then we had the reporting of the My Lai massacre, which had happened 1.5 years earlier back in March 1968, but they didn't get around to reporting that story till September 7th, 1969, 1 month after the Sharon Tate murder. They report the My Lai Massacre, which is also a bayonet M16 rifle attack, killing 504 people. It's a little bit larger kill ratio than the 7 people killed in the Sharon Tate Lino LaBianca murders. But anyway, that's when it all poured out into the fake media. You see, they get their stories out of order because the My Lai Massacre happened first, and then we had the Robert Kennedy assassination, and then we had the Zodiac killing, which wasn't called a Zodiac killing for 6 more months, till July 4th, 1969. Then we had a Zodiac killing based on a phone call, and then on July 31st, we had a series of letters allegedly sent to the DeYoung brothers and to William Randolph Hearst Company, proclaiming the Zodiac was loose. And then we had the Sharon Tate murders, and then we had another Zodiac killing at Lake Berryessa, and then we had Art Linkletter's 20-year-old daughter thrown out of her 6th-floor apartment, and then the media said that was an LSD suicide, which was a lie, and she had a CIA operative, 27-year-old Ed Durston, in her kitchen at 9 o'clock in the morning baking cookies with her when she went flying out of her balcony window like she's Superwoman, headfirst into the sidewalk on North Horn Avenue at 1211 North Horn, which is where all the CIA spooks live. That is a reserved for CIA operatives apartment building across the street from where Diane Linkletter lived in an expensive, larger unit on the 6th floor of the Shoreham Towers. Okay? And then we had the final Zodiac killing of Paul Stein, who the media told you he was 29 years old and he was shot with a .38 caliber pistol, when the reality he's 38 years old and he lives in Haight-Ashbury, 2 blocks from the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, where Abigail Folger's mother is the paymaster, and that he was killed by a 9mm Browning semi-automatic pistol. So that's a little different version of reality than what the media reported. Okay, so those are some examples of poppycock mendacity of the media and why you should just not take anything they say seriously. So if they tell you to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. If they tell you to shelter in place, go out, and you may need a mask if they're doing the chemtrail dumping. So I'm not telling you that it's safe out there. What I'm telling you is that the media lies. That's what I'm telling you. And Hollywood is the leader of the lies. Okay? And for example, how many films has Hollywood produced regarding the drug business, the infamous narcotics, illegal, felonious drug business in America, or worldwide drug trafficking? And the answer is, I lost count. I mean, dozens, hundreds, right? So I just have a few examples. I've got about, 20 examples at least about drug smuggling and celebrating drug dealing in America. And this is the CIA hiding in plain view, because you do realize you cannot be in the drug business unless you can control the port facilities, all right? And the United States has about 260 port facilities, 18 of which produce 85% of the trafficking of containers in this country go through 18 port facilities in America, all right? And the CIA controls port facilities worldwide. All port facilities worldwide, all container port facilities worldwide are clandestine military controlled, okay? No exceptions. They also control all the military air bases where large cargo planes that could carry drugs and weapons or human trafficking can land. The C-5, the KC-135, the KC-10 extenders, the planes that can do aluminum chemtrail dumpings, the planes that can smuggle cocaine and heroin, opium products into this country are fully clandestine controlled. So the concept that Ronald Reagan and Nancy Davis, not her real name, Reagan, said just say no to drugs is kind of preposterous, because the United States military under CIA control is importing illegal drugs into this country every day for the last 200 years. All right, so Hollywood came out with, I'll be out of order on some of these things. So Scarface, starring Al Pacino, about a Cuban who was imprisoned and then traded to Miami, remember? And then he gets into the cocaine business, Tony Montoya, and he becomes wealthy from his drug trade. And then, of course, he samples too much of his own product, loses his marbles, and ends up getting machine gunned with a military rifle in his beautiful estate property somewhere in Miami. That came out in 1983 to celebrate Al Pacino's role of Tony Montoya, a Cuban exile made good in the cocaine business. Then there's some other films, Broke Down Palace, featuring two young women played by Claire Danes and Kate Beckinsale. And they basically are duped into being drug mules in Asia, and they're caught and put into prison. That is a theme that came out in 1999. But don't forget Oliver Silverstein Stone. He did a film earlier, did he not? Midnight Express in 1978. Oliver Stone produced a film about hashish trafficking with the character Billy Hayes, who's played by Brad Davis, who's, I guess, busted at the airport with hashish, and he ends up in a Turkish prison. All right? Maybe that was a tribute to Oliver Stone's good friend Mario Kassar and Andras Weidman, a Jewish man who was born in Istanbul, Turkey. Istanbul, Turkey. He goes by Andrew Vajna, born in Istanbul, Turkey. So anyway, Midnight Express was a drug-dealing, trafficking film directed by Oliver Silverstein Stone in 1978. Then we had the movie Blow, featuring Johnny Depp in 2001. Oh, I'm sure that was, very accurate portrayal. But my favorite, of course, is The Godfather Part I and The Godfather Part II, because it became clear in both of those films that the main sources of income for the five crime families of New York, Sicilian, was going to be in the drug trafficking business. Remember, that is why Vito Corleone was assassinated, or there was an attempted assassination on him, because he refused to go into the heroin business with the Turk, the guy who's good with the knife, right? So then it was continued in Godfather Part II. But nowhere in the film that was directed by Francis Ford Coppola did you hear the initial CIA or where the supply sources were for all these drugs. The five crime families of New York are going to be dealing drugs into their neighborhood channels. Where are the drugs coming from, right? They have to go through a port facility, and there's no mention of who controls the ports or that the clandestine services would be the suppliers for the five families of New York. So you have the CIA is mocking us. They're mocking us. They're showing us a movie starring, again, Al Pacino and Marlon Brando and Robert Duvall, okay? They come and go in lots of nefarious social engineering messaging films, and they want to celebrate, that gangsters are family members, and they celebrate First Holy Communions and weddings, and that they, are respectful and that they're due respect, except they never mention that they're partners with the CIA. That's kind of a big omission and concealment of the truth. To back that up, we have The French Connection, again, Part 1 and 2, starring Gene Hackman, right, and Roy Schneider, who's Jewish, Roy Schneider. He also is in Marathon Man, which has a diamond element and Nazi Jewish connection in Marathon Man. I'm not going to talk about that. Anyway, so Gene Hackman, he plays a New York policeman named Popeye, and he wants to get the bad guys, which the bad guy is living in Marseille, in the port facility of France, Marseille, and also has a big estate in Nice, which is, a little bit further east on the coast road. I've personally been there. I've been to Cannes, I've been to Nice, I've been to Monte Carlo, aka the Principality of Monaco. I've been to San Remo, the Principality of San Remo. I've been to Imperia. I've been along the Italian and French Riviera, but I have not been to Marseille. Been close, but not to Marseille. Anyway, that film is about the importation of drugs, and the implication is that it's this French gangster that's doing it, when in reality it's the clandestine services that's doing it, not the French guy living in Marseille and Nice. So that's kind of a laughing in our face that we're too stupid to figure that out. Then we have a movie that Hollywood produced in 2000 called Traffic, which stars Michael Douglas, who's Jewish. And Michael Douglas has some family problems because of his success in the drug business. What else have we got here? We got the Cocaine Cowboys, which came out in 2006. Then we have The Constant Gardener with Ray Fiennes. That came out in 2005. Now, Constant Gardener is a little bit of a variation on the drug dealing theme. They're using these helpless poor people in Africa as drug experiments for a jab. In other words, you don't get your food credits and you cannot buy food unless you get your mandatory injections. Does that sound a little bit sort of like the COVID policy here in America? The Constant Gardener, where they're providing you drugs for free in exchange for getting you food for free if you'll participate in an experiment. But it's not voluntary because, see, if you don't get your food, you're going to starve to death and die, right? So it's not a voluntary program. It's a mandate. It's a mandated program. And they were doing that in The Constant Gardener. And Ralph Fiennes' wife found out about it, and she was going to blow the whistle, so that she got murdered. And then Ray Fiennes found out who murdered her, which was his employer, the pharmaceutical company. So then he was going to blow the whistle, so they murdered him too. Then the whistle got blown in London, England anyway, after his death. So that's a drug movie called Constant Gardener. Then we have other smuggling movies like The Italian Job, starring Mark Wahlberg. That came out in 2003, where they stole gold bullion bars in Venice, Venezia, Italy, and smuggled them back to Los Angeles. Except that those gold bullion bars undoubtedly are collateral for drug trafficking, inventories, as one of my professors used to drive me crazy, used to call inventories inventories. It was sort of an inside joke. Anyway, then we had another smuggling movie called Blood Diamond, which of course had, that came out in 2006 with the, actor du jour. I forgot his name, but he did a great job in that film where they were smuggling diamonds out of Africa, and there was a lot of murder and mayhem that went along with the drug smuggling. Then we had the television show Miami Vice, which had Dakota Johnson's father in it, Don Johnson. Dakota Johnson is 33 years old. She had her birthday on October 4th, 2022. She turned 33 years old. So she's the same age as Aaron Valente was. So I do hope and pray for the best for Dakota Johnson. But anyway, her father, Don Johnson, starred in the television show Miami Vice. I don't have the years on that. Then they came out with a film called Miami Vice, the same name, in 2006, again celebrating the cocaine business in Florida. Then we had American Gangster, and that was in 2007, and you know who was in that film. And that's enough. That's enough examples of drug films in Hollywood. And in none of those films did you hear that the CIA was the supplier of the drugs. Never heard that in any of those Hollywood films. And that's over 20 films. And they concealed the truth. And that there's an Oliver Stone film in there, right? The Midnight Express. He concealed the clandestine service participation in hashish smuggling. So I consider that to be criminal. All right? Anyway, I don't think you need to be an expert to understand that we're being lied to and conditioned like a Pavlov's dog on a 24/7 basis for as long as you're living in this world, unless you completely go into a Ted Kaczynski, cabin in the mountains with no electricity. They are lying 24/7 and beaming the lies into your home. All right, so you can call me a conspiracy nut, lunatic, crazy man. It won't do you any good, because the problem is that I'm correct. I'm 100% correct. So have a great day. Hit the like and subscribe. And do share my videos, because I am shadow banned. There's no doubt about it. It's hilarious. I recreated myself over at YT, and they will just delete, like 2,000 of my views off of a video that gets a little too popular, especially my banking videos. They will just karate chop it. They used to just delete them. They keep my videos on there, but then they reduce the views, and that throws it way down in the algorithm so that, no one's going to ever find my video in their searches. So I'm starting to understand how the algorithms are programmed. They don't have to delete you to essentially delete you. And also, I found out that these people with millions of views, like Sacha Cohen, for example, there's another Jewish man who was born in London, Sacha Cohen. You may know Sacha Cohen from his characters that he's created over time. I've got him right here. Sacha Noam Baron Cohen. He has the same middle name as Noam Chomsky. All right, so Sacha Noam Baron Cohen, he was born in Hammersmith, London. He is about 51 years old today. He created his Ali G character, the rude boy style, black hip-hop Jamaican attitude. He created the Da Ali G show, the character Borat. He created Borat. He created Bruno, Gerhard, Admiral General Alan Dean. Okay? He's a clandestine service operator. Okay? He's social engineering content. Sacha Noam Baron Cohen. To be ignored. Okay? He's the enemy. He's there to provide confusion and chaos, just like Larry David does. And Larry David worked closely with Cheryl Hines, who's married to Robert Kennedy Jr., right? So, unfortunately, Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, the Jews from Brooklyn, Lawrence Schiller, Cheryl Hines, Robert Kennedy, they're to be ignored. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.